And a Geek with Khedrup Rinpoche and Mikey Siegel, a conversation on Buddhism and technology.
So this is a particularly exciting event for me for a number of reasons. I'll introduce this beautiful man over here in a second, which is the main reason probably. It's just I enjoy being on stage with him. We've spent the last few weeks together roaming around California, and I'll talk about that in a second. But bigger picture, this is an exciting event because it really represents the dance and even the tension that lies at the heart of consciousness happening. And what Khedrup Rinpoche is representing is a multi-thousand-year-old spiritual tradition, which for many of us, me included, there can be this sense of dissonance when we imagine this next to modern technology, like that phone. When we think of traditional Buddhism, we think of mala beads, and we think of a meditator in a cave. We think of the kind of simplest, most bare bones forms of human expression and experience. And for many of us, when we think of modern technology, it almost feels like the opposite. It feels like something very different, and yet here we are in a space and in a community that's actually exploring not just how these things can coexist, but actually how can they be additive to each other? How can the two coming together actually create something greater than the sum of their parts? And is that even possible? Does that even make sense? And so this conversation, in a way, is kind of those two extremes dancing with each other. But there's another side of it as well, which is the two extremes actually lovingly reaching towards each other. And that kind of brings me to actually introducing Khedrup Rinpoche. So I first met Rinpoche at a festival called the Happiness Fest in Mexico. This was at the beginning of this year. And, of course, my first impression of him, as you'll get to see over the next hour or so, is of a genuinely just happy and joyful human being. And we connected right away. We ended up sitting next to each other at a lunch and forming a friendship. And then, surprisingly, I don't think either of us really had any notice, we ended up on stage at that festival talking about the intersection of Buddhism and technology. And so it was our first chance to really explore these topics. And we ended up actually spending a number of hours later on in that festival diving deeper. And what resulted from that conversation, and those series of conversations, left me inspired and impressed. Because what I saw in Rinpoche was simultaneously a man who has as one of his core responsibilities on this planet as upholding a ancient Buddhist lineage. And this is one of his purposes here on Earth. But at the same token, he's one of the most open-minded and curious traditional Buddhists that I've met in terms of the way he's thinking about modern technology and its role in the future of Buddhism, sort of the forward-thinking perspective. And so we've actually spent the last 3 weeks, where's Connie? 5 weeks? Wow, time has gone by fast, okay. We spent the last 5 weeks together in California. For about 2 weeks of that, actually living together. We were kind of like two spiritual bachelors, just, hanging out and giving each other high fives. Has been to build this bridge between the ancient tradition that Rinpoche is coming from into not just the United States, but into Silicon Valley and into this tech world of people actually developing these technologies. And I want to say a little bit so you have a sense of where Rinpoche is coming from, and then I'm going to pass the mic over to him. Rinpoche was recognized at the age of 5 as being the 5th reincarnation in his particular lineage. And this is one aspect of traditional Buddhist culture, is that, as many of you know, they believe in reincarnation, and that actually certain people can attain a certain level of consciousness through which they can actually choose to be born again. Regardless of our belief system, this is the amazing culture that he's coming from. And the lineage that he's born into is highly regarded in Bhutan, to the point where when he was 19, he was bestowed a 1,200-year-old monastery with 30 monks to be responsible for. That was after he'd done his 3-year-long meditation retreat. And so this is a man who has been practicing since the age of 13, and is not just a serious meditator, but is also someone who is in a way responsible for upholding the history of this Buddhist lineage into the future. And so maybe we could start off so that I have a kind of a sense of things with maybe anything that I left out about yourself, or kind of, what, your background that you think they need to know, and then leading into maybe helping us have a sense for what is the lineage that you're representing. What, a lot of us have spiritual practices. A lot of us meditate. Even some of us are familiar with Buddhism and different flavors. Maybe you could talk about what your lineage looks like, its practices, and also what its ultimate goal is, how you think about enlightenment.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for a wonderful introduction. And I'm being very careful with this mic, actually, so that I don't mess up. Is it loud? Is it okay? Yeah, good. Thank you. So I'm being very careful with, especially the technology. So because I'm trying to use it with right intentions, but sometimes it's too loud. Anyway, thank you. And the most important points that need to be introduced to people about me is being introduced. So I think I have no more left to introduce. But if I have to introduce them, it will take a little long time. So, yeah. Better?
It's good. I think you can just forget it.
So, the most important about generally as a Tibetan Buddhism, through Chinese Buddhism, and so on and so, like it has been divided into 4 different classes. And from there, it is called Nyingmapa. Nyingmapa is something called, this is actually Tibetan language. And Nyingma, Nying means like old. Nyingmapa means like old classes. So it was translated from great sort of like Indian scriptures to Tibetan languages in the last 8th century. So the very important practices of my lineage is called Dzogpa Chenpo, which probably many of you must be aware of, that who talk still concerns about consciousness, and Dzogchen teachings might be very sort of renownedly known. And I think in the West, many of teachers have also, I have met many teachers who practice this Dzogchen teaching. So the lineage that I belong to is called Longchen Yingpik lineage, which particularly followed from, of course we have 3 different kind of layers of lineages we can divide it, but if we talk about this sort of like, from that great master, he was the grand student of the Rinpoche. And he was called Longchen Namjamba. Longchen Namjamba was sort of like, he was very sort of like, how to say, learned masters among the many Tibetan great masters. So what he did was that, there were sort of like so many different great teachings, which is divided into different lineages. So what he did was he collect all of those essence of the teachings and make it in one lineage. So that lineage, since 14th century, so it had come to sort of like Bhutan, and since I think 17th century, then again the first lineage of Khedrupchen lineage went to Tibet to learn from one great master called the great Jigme Kundrol. And the Jigme Kundrol had the 4 principal students, and one of them, 4 principal students, also we can call it 4 fearless students who holds those lineages. And one of them was the first Khedrupchen Rinpoche. And from there, this lineage has been given the responsibilities to look after, to preserve, to expand to the reincarnations of Khedrupchens. And I was given this responsibility when I was 19 years old, with the huge responsibility to preserve this historical, heritage of Bhutan, which was 1,200 years old temple. Yeah, and then which was built by an amazing female saint. Yeah, I would say, one of the most important there in the West nowadays. There are problems going on with gender issues here. So, in those times itself, Bhutan was freedom with gender issues, so there was no problem. Female can become a master, men can become a master, everyone who are capable can become a master. So, she was a very important principal consort of Padmasambhava. And then she built this temple, and after let's say like 1,200 years, so I don't know what makes me to go there, but the people make decisions to give there to me. So since then, I have always been taking care of this lineage. So in this lineage, the most important point that if we really talk, then it is it holds the essence, the collective essence of Vajrayana teachings. So whereas that in different lineages, we have a different sort of portions of different sort of lineages. So but in this lineage, you have a collective essential teaching. So again, then one another most incredible thing here is actually skillful. Like the teachings of the skillful is very direct. So it has like this lineage gives you the big instruction, direct instructions of the mind. So I would say there were many of great masters even in today's time who practice Dodrupchen. If you really go very deeper into everyone's teaching, then everyone will refer to Moksha Lajjana, which comes from Moksha Lajjana. But then, because of different students, then they make their different lineages. So nowadays, because if people wanted to eat potato, then you can make a potato lineage. So if someone wants to eat pumpkin lineage, so sort of pumpkins, then you can make a pumpkin lineage. So sort of like it has been divided into different forms later on. So but still the original lineages exist, and that responsibility was given to me in Bhutan when I was 19 years old. So the most advanced in this lineage is that because of this collective wisdom, so you have this extraordinary sort of like a way of realization, which is very easier than taking lots of time to bring you to really obtain the obtain the realization of the state of your mind. So I think this is what's special in this lineage.
And so just quickly, Rinpoche, for someone, let's say, that's never heard of Buddhism, they never even heard of, just they're familiar with the idea of meditation, what is the goal? What is the reason you're meditating? What is the reason you're doing this lineage from that? From the perspective of your lineage, it results in what?
Mikey, the mic. His mic is really echoey and yours is really clear.
Okay. Oh, mine is clear.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you.
it's ugly Mike. So
That's the good.
that's me. So anyway, let's say, I would say generally speaking about the perspective of Buddhism, I think there is two different kind of goals for meditating, or let's say like in any kind of Buddhist teaching. There is a relative sort of like goal, and then there is ultimate goal for every one of us. I think when Buddhism was introduced to the West, it was introduced as stress relief, sort of like, way of, like meditation was all like, okay, if you meditate, your stress is gone. You can concentrate more, right? So I think that ultimately, sort of relatively, it can, because we can also understand that. Relatively, it makes you to feel better person. You are more connected. For example, most of the people in today's time is disconnected to themselves. So with the meditation, it can bring your soul, or your, so let's not talk about soul, but mind back to the home, which is your body. And you could able to do so many things together, your mind and body together, which can make you complete of all the works. Now this is sort of like, a relative purpose, I would say. So ultimate purpose is actually then beyond than a normal human being, which we talk about today. Let's say happiness. When we're talking about happiness, then our happiness, that whatever we have at this moment, it can easily be distracted by anything else. You can say, I'm happy right now, but after when you cross this sort of like house, and then someone just, how to say, bumps you and say like you're a stupid, don't have eyes, then your happiness is all gone. Then you're furious. You get happy. So sorry, you get angry, not happy. Yeah, I'm talking opposite here. So when I'm nervous, my tongue doesn't work. So if you don't understand, you can ask me the question again. So our happiness, which is very relative, is not solid. So we need to obtain this immortal happiness, or let's say immortal peacefulness or joyfulness, which will be only able to obtain that when you obtain intrinsic awareness of your mind, which is a state of your mind. So meditation can lead to that kind of like sort of very deep sense of knowing yourself much more better way. So I would say these two things, or let's say like that intrinsic awareness is also then referred to be enlightened, immortal, freedomness, and so on. So yeah, you can call it any kind of things, but which is undestructible, which the negative emotions or any kind of relative things cannot break through that sort of like realization. That is sort of like ultimate purpose of the meditation.
Thank you, Rinpoche. So that helps us to understand kind of the context, because I think in these communities, there's so much conversation around meditation and enlightenment and awakening and consciousness and all of these things. So hearing what you mean by that helps us to ground a little more. So now to kind of bring it into here and the West and Silicon Valley, what brings you here? You've been wanting to come to the United States for quite some time. Why is that?
I would like to share some stories. Is it sure? If you have a time, then if you don't have a time, I will skip that, but I will make it shorter as much as possible.
You share whatever your heart wants to share.
It was 2000, I think lately 2008 and beginning of 2009. I was diagnosed as a jaundice patient, and I was unconscious, and I was admitted in Apollo Hospital in Delhi. So I would say, medication fees in India is totally it's very expensive, but probably for Americans might not be that expensive, but for Bhutanese people like us, and on the other hand, that I belong to a very family who have gone through who have this poverty. Is it poverty? Yeah. And for us, it is totally, even 10,000 rupees itself is very, very expensive, which is equivalent to $150 here. So I was admitted there, and I was diagnosed as a jaundice patient, and I was asked to be in the hospital for almost like a few weeks. And I was very exhausted because we have to have there was extra tensions about how can we manage financially. But I would say I always thank that from my sort of inner heart for those two kind and compassionate American ladies that who came and helped me to cover all expenses when I was admitted there for first or second days, and they take the responsibilities, and I was totally recovered after that. So I still have this seed of coming to America since that day, saying that okay, I have to come back one day and then help Americans to learn about inner happiness. So my seed of coming to America have started from that moment, and so many times failed to get visa. Last year, in 2017. Then I went for sort of like interview, and they said, "You're not qualified." So I said, "Okay, thank you." And then I was thinking, on the way, why am I not qualified about? So slowly, it means gives me some motivations to really prepare something better way. I have to practice much more, and because Americans are very smart, they're scientists, they're technologists, they're engineers. So people here are, I would say that this sort of Western world, especially the Silicon Valley of San Francisco Bay Area, is the Western sun. The sun of innovation is happening here, and then it goes to all around the world. So I should really study myself, okay, am I really enough to go there? That I could really help them. So this time, when we actually, after I met with Mikey in San Francisco, Mexico, San Diego, and since then we were talking about how I can come to this, what I can do here, and so and so. So so this happens, and then I came with the intentions of learning what is technology about, because I have great impressions about technology. So that technology is one of the very first growing technology, I think, sort of the economy in today's time. And until and unless I met with Mikey and with his group flow machines, I have a better sort of like inspirations about technology. I would say to my monks that even if I find them using a mobile for a minute, then I will get a little pissed off. So, but that was a great impressions for me that meditation can be introduced through technology. Since then, I was totally blind, to be honest. I have never imagined that Buddhist teachings like meditations can be introduced through technology. So inspirations have got from that moment, and then I have extra reasons to come to United States. So I think these two motivations makes me to come to United States.
So a lot of people coming from a traditional background wouldn't necessarily view technology in that way. They might see it as something very different, something incompatible with traditional approaches to meditation. So how is it that you see technology playing a role in the introduction of Buddhism, or as a tool that can actually help Buddhism or meditation? How do those two things fit together for you?
That's a very important question indeed. The very important part of Buddhism is actually the wisdom. And that wisdom is always introduced or taught through skillful means. Yeah? And
can you say quickly what you mean by skillful means?
Yeah, skillful means is a method. For example, it's a frame. For example, if you wanted to present one chocolate to someone else, you cannot just simply present the chocolate, just picking in your hand and giving to someone else. Probably these people won't value that, but if you cover it properly, so then with the cover, so there is different drinks, isn't it? But for example, a couple of I think weeks ago, I got a tea. So tea could be the same tea, you get it from the markets, but the packaging can make a difference. It can probably charge you a few thousands of dollars for one tea, which is the same tea in Zen. So I think this Buddhism, the Buddhist teachings, the essence of Buddhist teachings were always introduced through skillfulness, which is a method, which is a frame. So, especially Vajrayana teachings, we have infinite methods of that in the skillfulness. So I would say in this degeneration time, especially 21st century, the technology is one of the biggest growing economic, right? Economic in the world. And I used to think that technology is some technologies are unskillful technology. But I think technology itself is a neutral. So that with your neutral, yeah. So that with your intentions, then it manifests to a positive technology, skillful technology, or unskillful technology. It's up and down. The one who is using it. So the technology, for example, the meditation aid. If any one of us, in this room probably, who has this normal life job, who has to go to, at 9 o'clock in the office and coming back at 6 o'clock, if you are asked to go to some temples or centers to practice, probably it's difficult for you to make it every day, in every day. But if you are asked to practice through the meditation aid, much more easier. So this is one of the skills, which is already happening. And there are so many things like group flow also, there is split reactions, whether you are able to really meditate or not. It's something that is shown immediately in front of you. So I think, technology has played a strong role in the spiritual world. So, so I would say, if I have to really think about the future of Buddhism, so then this is one way I could preserve the essence of Buddhism, through technology. Because technology will grow more and more. And if I have some techniques, if I have some wisdoms to impact the Buddhist wisdoms in technology, then after thousands of years also, people might be using technology. And with that technology, the essence of Buddhism will be there. And thousands of billions of people might be using it at the same time. So if you really wanted to make the spirit the message of Buddha's teaching, I think technology could be one of the most advanced, skillful that can happen. So my impression to the technology is that how I can use it as a skillful to teach Dharma. Yeah.
Thank you. You said something really. Is this on? Stephen, hello. Anyway, it's on. But anyway, so you said something really. There we go. You said something really interesting during our time together, which was surprising to me. I wonder if you'd share a little bit about it. You said you thought that the future of Buddhism was actually in the West. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I think we are here to talk about technology and Buddhism, but still, So the reason why I think that the future of Buddhism is in the West is that because Westerners are the thinkers. They think before they take an action. I have not even met very easy persons after coming to the United States. I would say not even one. Every one of them has to say, why is that happening? And so, it's totally sometimes these questions are sort of very, how to say that, like a child, they ask so many questions. So anyway, questioning is very important. When Buddha taught his teaching, the most important word that he left is that, hey, my monks, my followers, don't take the Buddhist teaching very seriously, or don't simply follow the Buddha's teaching because you believe in me, or either saying that your family was a Buddhist, or either your friend asks you to follow, or either you admire Buddhist teaching.
Don't blindly.
Just don't blindly follow that. So what he said was, study that, analyze that, implement that, and if you find the truth in this teaching, then follow. That's what he said. He gave us the sort of a total independence to follow his teaching. He have never said the Buddha's teaching has to go through the caste. So, see, like, when we talk about the thinkers are the ones who really go deeper into that. So I think, Buddha's teaching are all about how to define the truths. So I think, Westerners are most probably, I won't say every Westerners are the thinkers, okay, by the way. There might be one or two who are not thinkers, worse than me, I would say.
You can tell he's only been in Silicon Valley. It's kind of his
yeah. So I would say that by majority of Westerners are thinkers. So when you think and take it with your sort of own sort of result after thinking, analyzing, so then people will get more serious in it slowly. It's happening already. Like when Buddhism was introduced to the West last 3 decades ago, it was introduced as something, type of okay, it's really so and so. But now people talk about consciousness, which people used to think, stupid and all, so on and so. But it is happening, it's manifesting. So after now to another 50 to 60 years, I won't say Buddhist cultural are here in the West, but Buddhist wisdom would be strongly practiced as a human value or humanity in the West.
And is it so? Is it, just to be clear, because we've talked a lot, so I want to clarify a little. When you talk about Buddhist wisdom expressing in the West, tell me if this is true. My understanding from our conversations is what you mean by that is the deeper essence of the wisdom, meaning it doesn't even need to necessarily look like Buddhism anymore. But if the deeper pith, the deeper essence of the teaching is there, and the deeper experience of the nature of mind is there, then that's the most important thing. Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely right. Buddhist teachings, when we talk about Buddhist teachings, and I'm talking about the essence of the wisdom. That's what all about Buddhist teaching is about. I think what does Buddhist teachings looks like? Probably if you ask that question, then if you encounter this way, this robe and all, pumpkin here, I would say, the bold, bold here with no hairs. I think this is not a Buddhism. This is how the follower of Buddhist, of a Buddha, so-called Buddhist monks who dedicated their life to practice Buddhist teachings, actually are like that. But actually, the Buddhist teaching has been practiced in so many different ways. For example, Vimalakirti, he was an entrepreneur. When Vimalakirti Sutra, there is one teachings of Buddha which is called Vimalakirti Sutra. When Vimalakirti Sutra was taught, Buddha had lots of impressions towards him. He said his wisdom is very deeper than even a novel monk. He was a living bodhisattva who obtained the realization of sort of his lifetimes. So, but he never became monks like us. So essence was whole. He was still entrepreneur, he was doing a business, totally okay. It was totally okay for him. So Buddha never said you have to become monk if you have to follow him. It was never that. So in one of the very important teachings of Buddha's teaching, which is called Vajrachedika Sutra, or we can call it Diamond Sutra, but actual translation has to be Diamond Cutter Sutra. Yeah? So, which is the actual word exists in sort of like Sanskrit or Tibetan language. So over there it says that whoever describes as a realized person or sort of the nature of Buddha in form, whoever sort of make it as a sound, then that kind of person have already a wrong perspective. They will never understand the essence of Buddhism. It has to talk about inner sort of qualities. So I often say the Buddhism was never a religion, I would say. It was a philosophy. It's a philosophy of how to make your life better. So Buddha was never Buddhist. Buddha was never Buddhist. So So it's very important here. We have to know that. So through that, I think, like if we hold the essence, that's all about Buddhism. We don't need to say, you don't need to like become such and such certain kind of person. It's really important to become a Buddhist. I don't think so.
So this is great, and actually one of the reasons why I wanted to kind of dive into that a little bit is because from my perspective, it really opens up the door to imagine deeper collaborations, bringing in these streams of this kind of traditional Buddhist thought that you're talking about, and other spiritual traditions, potentially Western psychology, potentially science, and as far as this conversation is concerned, with technology. Because if what you're saying is that what really matters is the deeper essence, separate from the form that it takes, then perhaps that essence can exist in any vehicle, whether that vehicle is technological, or it's a form of a meditation technique, or it's a temple, or whatever it might be. And I guess one last question, because we're running out of time. So there's a lot of people that are in the audience who are in some way or another maybe involved in developing a tech. Actually, I have a question. How many people in the audience are in some way or another involved in the development of some technology in this space? So do you see Rinpoche? Can you raise your hand up again? These are all the people that are developing some technology right now in this space. So could you give us a sense of how you see this merging happening of the essence of the traditional Buddhist teachings into the West with science, with technology? We've been talking about this project, the Haruka House, right? Maybe talking a little bit about what that looks like and what this kind of intersection might be, and maybe what's important to think about from the perspective of the people who are designing this technology.
Thank you so much. Before I answer your question, I would like to talk a little bit about this skillfulness. I would say a very important message in this conversation is that any technology that impact with the deeper wisdom of Buddhism can be skillfulness. But I would say even it is the most advanced technology, if it is not impact with wisdom, then that is still unskillful. So I want to make it clear, because I don't want to create any misunderstandings. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I would say the Haruka House, yeah.
So I guess the question is, how do we do that?
How do we do?
How do you see that happening in the West? How do you see us designing these technologies that are impacted, that are infused with wisdom? What would that look like? What would the Haruka House look like? Can you describe it?
Yeah.
What that is?
I have never designed any technology, so for that, to really make this assumption is a very sort of difficult questions. But I would say, because you people are designers, you know better than me, so how would it look like? But the vision of Haruka House Center is actually to bring the technology, Western psychology, science, and Eastern ancient wisdoms in one platform. Okay, let's say marry and co-create new skillfulness that impact with deeper wisdom. That's actually the purpose of that's what the Haruka House is going to be happening. So I don't know what it will look like, but I would feel that it will really, of course, I trust that it will bring so much kind of changes of will be bringing this technology, psychology, science, and Eastern sort of wisdom together and co-create new skills. That includes a deeper sort of wisdom. So that's all I know right now.
Thank you, Rinpoche. And to kind of add my 2 cents onto this from our conversations, there's this, what he's talking about when he says Heruka House, what is being imagined right now to begin with, would be something like a month-long summer institute that may start as early as the summer of 2019, where leaders from traditional spiritual perspectives would come together with Western psychologists, would come together with neuroscientists, would come together with technologists and designers, not to debate ideas or perspectives or to come up with a new theory or model, but to actually work on the design of new transformative technologies. And so the output would actually ideally be new skillful means that can support awakening in the world. So that's a kind of an idea that's brewing. Okay, and then we have to go to the Q&A for a few minutes. Yes.
So yes, it's Mikey actually explored a little bit about what we are planning to come up with next year. I would say like one of the most important thing is actually to know the course where people are beginning to, get distracted with. For example, technologies. Most of the technologies nowadays, it is leading many people to depressions also. So I think, I would say in order to really change the technology, we have to know the course. Where does this technology comes from? So it is in a way the sort of technologists who are creating this technology. And it's very important to come together to one platform to have good intentions to save our world in a better way. Yeah. So I would hope to see some of you in next summer institute where we're going to be conducting, and come up with our own ideas and sit on the same platform and have better intentions to come up with better technology so that can really serve. I don't mean to say that technology is bad. Technology is good, but it can be more good that can really serve the well-being of sort of the human. So that's what we can do together. Thank you.
So this is part one. For the breakout sessions, Rinpoche and I will be leading one group, so that's really the opportunity for us to dive more deeply together. It's going to be more of a conversation, and so if you want to really explore with us and talk about these topics, stay for the second half. But we have time for maybe just a couple questions from the larger audience. Yes?
I'll try to speak down.
The buzzing sound. Yeah.
I have two questions.
Okay.
What is the correspondence between Heruka House and the Time and Life Institute that the Dalai Lama supports for technology and Buddhism or spiritual development? And the other question is, I'd like a comment on something that Thich Nhat Hanh said that falls right in with what you were talking about. He said that the next Buddha could be a Sangha. And I'd like to hear what you have to say about that.
Okay, so first question is, what's the difference or relationship between the Heruka House and the Mind and Life Institute?
Thank you, sir, for your question. Can I continue?
Yes, you can.
Okay, thank you. So otherwise, to give heart attack. Because of my ignorance, I don't have many information about Mind and Life Institute, but I have got a few informations from many people, like including Mikey and Michael, actually. So, Mind and Life Institute is where scientists and the spiritual Buddhist masters come and share the knowledge. It's a platform. So I would say Heruka House would be one more step of the Mind and Life. sort of the institute. I won't say Mind Lab Institute is not doing anything else. It is a great job already. So what we could do is how we can sort of like put it into practical form. Like instead of just sharing the knowledges, why not we put it into practical form so that can really bring the change to the world. The most important is knowing. It is very great to know, but after the knowing, putting into the practice can only bring the change. Otherwise, you are just simply sharpening the knife, but you are not cutting anything else. So putting into the practice is sharpening the knife and cutting something else, which is obstacles for you. So I think it's putting into the practice is very important. So this is what I want to share here. And number two, the great Tibetan, I have a great respect for him, and he is one of the most successful Buddhist teachers in the West, I'd say. And I've read many of his books also. So his concept of Buddha into the Sangha is exactly right. Even if the Buddha is in front of you today, probably you won't be able to know who he is, what he is, because our imagination of Buddha is all like a big aura, then sort of like how to say like extra here, like and golden top on the things, and then with no moments, very serious, that's all what we imagine about. What? The actual Buddha who really comes here to change probably might be looking like us. Probably he might be looking even worse than us also. Yeah, who knows? Because there is sort of like sort of some teachings of Buddha. He said that in order to like teach different people or liberate many different kind of sentient beings, he can come into different sort of forms. There is no exact forms, especially when we talk about manifestation forms. There is no as such accurate forms that we can see the Buddha in that form. So the Sangha, the concept of Sangha is very beautiful. The Sangha is like a brotherhood and sisterhood. The elder brother can lead all of other teams. The elder sister can lead all the teams. So Buddha is actually a teacher who teaches us. So if someone is coming and teaching us, leading us to the right way, leading us to the perfection way, then probably that could be referred as Buddha. So that can be in Sangha, that could be in like lay people, that can be sometimes seen as a like dog and cat. There is no guarantee for that, I would say. But yes, I would totally accept next Buddha could be found in Sangha. That is sort of like more positive way to put it in actually. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Thanks for the sharing of both of you. My question is, I think one of the great application of technology nowadays is to connect people, like Facebook or all those social networks. It is great because you connect people across the space, but at the same time, it creates or at least amplifies some anxiety there. Like I feel like a lot of times when I look at Facebook, I feel like I have this anxiety for people to, like that post or for people to contact me. I'm thinking that it's the thing is human body have evolved for like millions of years to adapt to the situation that we connect people face to face, like in person. But right now, most of the time, we connect to people through those electronic devices. So my question is, what do you think is the nature of human connection, and what do you think is the form for human connection to happen in this modern society where we have technology, but also we have this kind of ancient wisdom of Buddhism? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think you are concerning in a very good way. That's a very good question. I would consider that human connection is not about physical to physical connection, but it is heart to heart connection. That's I would consider as a human connection, rather than like say hi, hello, not that. But where you really find lovely community, where you find the compassionate community, where you find generous community, where you find happiness community, probably where that is where you find heart to heart connected person. So human connection, I would consider that the more better way, if I put it in a more better way. So Facebook nowadays, like Facebook, Instagram, and I would say like some, Twitter, right? Twitter and so and so. Is it Google also to connect? Yeah. So anyway, this is different kind of like any kind of social medias. It is very easy to connect, but also what we so-called Facebook. What is face about? Probably you're talking about one of the things. You're not just simply putting your face in the book and like saying, "Hey, I'm here." Probably not. So you will never able to. So for example, I think no one has this encouragement of writing all about your negative things yourself. Like I am a bad girl, or I'm a bad boy. I have this problem. I think you will only like to write down all the good things about yourself. So you have only shown your half face actually. So I'm sure that problems will gradually grow more and more because your intention is all totally wrong. What we are looking for is actually all positive things. You don't expect negative things. And when you get negative things, even in real life, you cannot resist that. So the most important, I would say, probably this could be the technique that I'm sharing here today. Whatever it is, whether it's a Facebook, Instagram, reality, so and so, everything is impermanent. It can change. So we have lots of anxieties because we take these impermanent circumstances as very solid and permanent thing. So problem often grows from that. You have a lots of expectations from that. And when you have expectations, and when the expectation fails, and that's where you find anxieties. So for temporary things, you need to take it temporarily. For the things that is not serious, you need to take it not seriously. So like a Facebook, why do you have to take very seriously? The things that, for example, this is one disconnection that we really wanted to bring as a sort of a story. I don't want to name which country and so, but I would like to, because I was observing. I was there in the dinner invited. I was a so-called chief guest today, yeah. So they put this, it's like gold, sort of silky sort of fabric on the chair, and I was asked to sit there. We were just surrounded, like it was a very important dinner for them. So we were just sitting there. Everyone seems to be so quiet. I was just simply observing because I have to pay attention to these people. But no one talks to me. So I was just invited to be single there. Yeah. So I was thinking that they might be respecting me because every one of them was just pulling their leg down. So I think, okay, probably this must be their culture. I respect it. But when I was just little like when I was trying to look at what this man is doing, and he was being so busy in Facebook, internet. And they're the daughter, they're the mother, they're the son. Every one of them are busy. They don't have a time, whether even they eat on one table. And later I found out the daughter was actually texting the father, saying, Papa, can I go to a disco today? And from this corner, the father is saying, yes, you can go, but make sure that you return at 11:30. So even you live in a small family, even one room, then you create this loneliness. So I would say, at least, if you really want to be happy, then when you're with your friends and family, keep your sort of Facebook or any kind of thing by side. Make it silent. I know it is very important, but most important is to be present. That's why there are lots of broken families. That's why there are lots of broken friendships. That's why there are lots of broken marriage life. Why? Because you're not present. Your physical form doesn't mean you're present there. Your mind is not present. You're just being here, but you're busy playing on Facebook or Instagram or game or so and so. So another person who really wanted to be present for you will be not happy gradually. So I would say the best gift, if you really wanted to make it for some person, just simply be present. I think this is one way we can begin to rejuvenate our origination of ourselves, so that we connect each other. So I think this is one thing that to do it with right intentions. If you're doing it with right intentions, like Facebook can make very easy for you to split your message. For example, if you wanted to say, hey, anyone can help this and this to happen, probably hundreds of people will appear and say, like, I'm here. It's easy. But use it with right intentions. As I mentioned earlier, if you have a right intention, then this technology will become a skillful method for you, that you can really do something that's better with that. But if you're doing it, using it with wrong intention, then that's something that you will be ruining yourself. That's all what I know about technology. Probably I might not have responded correctly, but I'm sorry.
Thank you. So I think.
Thank you, everybody. So we're going to have a whole other chance for those of you that want to join our group to dive deeper and to really explore these topics as a conversation.